Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. for the Institute for Dialectical Metarealism. In this video, I wanted to talk about the concept of intersectional Marxism. First, intersectional Marxism should not be confused with usual or normative definitions of intersectionality. There is a lot of confusion on that subject, though. Intersectionality itself was started by Kimberly Crenshaw, who was a law professor, and it was later expanded upon by the retired professor emeritus, Patricia Hill Collins, from the University of Maryland. Originally, as it was developed by Kimberly Crenshaw, intersectionality was considered to be a model, not a theory. Let me say that again. It was a model, not a theory. The reason why I am emphasizing that is because many people take it to be a theory. And they think that, well, because arguably Kimberly Crenshaw and Patricia Hill Collins, that's easy for me to say, we're not Marxists, or not Marxists in a kind of orthodox sense, that therefore intersectionality itself is not Marxist. That is a kind of confused notion of what intersectionality is supposed to be. Because intersectionality was a model, it was intended to be applicable to a broad spectrum of different approaches. So in other words, there is no single intersectionality. There can be many different intersectionalities. What Kimberly Crenshaw basically said, and I'm very much aware of her work, is that she came up with the idea of a roadmap. And she thought that, well, if we want to understand the way in which social inequality works in the United States, it's kind of like a roadmap, because each of us, in a sense, has our own roadmap, where you have these different highways, or as I prefer to call them, thoroughfares, because it has the word fares in it, meaning money. And each of those thoroughfares can be considered to be a kind of social structure. So one thoroughfare or structure might be race or racism. Another one might be ableism, or as our friends in Britain call it, disableism. Another one might be ageism. Another one might be called ageism, and on and on and on. In other words, there are many different structures of oppression which exist in society. And so each of those thoroughfares refers to a particular structure of oppression. So when we look at the roadmap, we can see that for me, there is a particular intersection. I can look at my race, I can look at my class, I can look at my gender, I can look at my disability as an autistic, and I can put together a particular map which basically describes who I am, or what my life is likely to be like. That is basically intersectionality. Now, you take that and you turn it into intersectional Marxism. Here's how I do it. What I do is I define intersectionality as social class. So, for the most part, I accept what Kimberly Crenshaw and Patricia Hill Collins have to say about intersectionality. But they, in their work, to my knowledge anyway, and I've read a lot of their work, never refer to intersectionality as social class. But as I see it, intersectionality is an elaboration of social class. It is a way of seeing how social class is not a simple thing, meaning it consists of all of these different structures, which in each one of us assumes a slightly different configuration. So you might see, for example, certain types of configurations among the bourgeoisie, certain among the proletariat, certain among the lumpenproletariat, certain among the subaltern, and so on, and so on, and so on. But that does not distract from the idea that we each have our own intersectionality, our own map of intersectionality, meaning our own map of social class, even though in general we might fit under a particular social class, a particular type of roadmap, in other words. So that is how I have transformed for myself intersectionality into intersectional Marxism. Now, there are a number of different writers who have explored the subject, and they have their own approaches. So all I am doing is giving you my own point of view. Please don't confuse what I am saying with what other people are saying, or assume that because I am saying this is how I define intersectional Marxism, that other people who call themselves intersectional Marxists will have the same definition as I do. No, of course not. This is what I have developed for the time being, and I assume that I will continue to develop it into the future. So that's the first part of it that I wanted to mention, that I begin with the intersectionality as it was developed by Kimberly Crenshaw, but then I define intersectionality as social class. So again, in effect, intersectionality becomes an elaborated map of how social class works. And the fact that we each have our own intersectional maps, like roadmaps, means that we all experience our lives a bit differently. So my experience of race, class, gender, disability, age, etc., is most likely going to be different than yours because my map is different. And therefore, the way in which those structures intersect with one another are not going to be precisely the same. So it's really, I think, an extraordinarily useful way to understand social class. Unfortunately, because so many people, when they think of intersectionality, they think of Kimberly Crenshaw and Patricia Hill Collins, they stop with that. And they say, well, this isn't a Marxist perspective. And they are right. It is not a Marxist perspective. It is a model which can be applied and used with various different theories. In my case, social theories or sociological theories. For political scientists, I assume political theories. For economists, I would assume economic theories, and so on. So it's a very useful device, as I see it, for trying to come to terms with the way social class works and with avoiding simplistic views of social class. Many people approach social class in what is called an economistic way. Economistic may sound confusing. It's not confusing. It means that they approach social class using a kind of economic determinism, where all that matters is the economy. All that matters is how much money people make. All that matters is how much education people have. All that matters is a person's economic status. You put those things together, and you have what we call in sociology socioeconomic status. That is certainly important. But the question is, what is socioeconomic status in detail? And that's what intersectionality tells us. Socioeconomic status is an operationalization of social class. A big word, but not a hard word to understand. Operationalization means taking a concept and stating it in a way that it can be measured. And socioeconomic status allows us to measure, or at least provides us with tools that we can apply to measure social class. So in a sense, you can call intersectionality social class, or if you want to get more sophisticated, you can say it's socioeconomic status. Either one works, but it's not as simple as most people see it. Second thing, Antifa. Most ways of understanding Antifa have focused on the types of authoritarianism, the types of oppression, the types of fascism or neo-fascism, including neo-Nazism, which exist in our own societies. And by our own societies, what I mean as a first worlder is first world societies. Now, I am not dismissing the importance of that. Certainly, it is vital to consider authoritarianism in first world societies. For me especially, I live in the first world. I need to understand how authoritarianism, how fascism, how Nazism works in the first world. That's my home. So it makes sense that I would do that. But I am also a socialist from below, third worldist. And so beyond that, I need to focus on the third world and on the way in which the third world is oppressed by the first world. The first world is sometimes called the empire or the American empire. It is the oppressor nations, the nations that oppress the third world and have been doing so for many decades. So if I look at the first world or the empire, and I see how the empire is oppressing and has been oppressing the third world now for a really long time, that is another type of Antifa, right? What Patricia Hill Collins talks about in her work is shifting the center. So what I am doing is I am saying, in addition to shifting the center from, as Collins and Crenshaw emphasize, from white people to black people, which of course is important. It's very important. The civil rights movement showed us that. The Black Lives Matter movement has shown us that. So we know that shifting the center racially is really, really important. However, if I bring that into a socialist from below, Maoist, third worldist context, then I go beyond that. And I say, well, let's shift the center to the third world, from the first world to the third world. So socialism from below, third worldism, which I just incorrectly said is socialism from below, Maoism, third worldism. I don't call it that anymore. I just say socialism from below, third worldism, because I think it's clearer and less confusing, is about focusing on the needs of the third world. And certainly the Western world or the first world or the or the global north, or whatever name you want to use for it, has been in a position to oppress the third world for a really, really long time. And so, again, I have taken Patricia Hill Collins' concept of shifting the center, and I've not ignored it. I certainly agree with her that shifting the center from oppressor groups or oppressor structures in one's own society to oppressed structures in one's own society, that is important. But what's even more important, especially right now, in a time when the third world is undergoing so much suffering, and where many people in the third world are experiencing such tremendous despair, that we shift the center from the first world to the third world. That means both shifting the center of my thinking and shifting the center of my being. Shifting the center of my thinking means that I focus on thinking about the third world. Shifting the center of my being is that I focus on the people who live in the third world and what their lives are like and how they suffer on a daily basis and the kinds of experiences they have. That's all a part of shifting the center. So shifting the center, which to Collins is also a part of intersectionality, is vital when looking at the third world. So let's review. We talked about two basic aspects of intersectional Marxism. One, redefining the intersectional map as social class, or to be more precise, socioeconomic status, which is a way of measuring social class in a concrete way. And second, about shifting the center of our thinking to the third world and shifting the center of our being to people living in the third world. That's about it for now. This has been Mark, or Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow.